We've reviewed hundreds of cameras, and it's taught us something important. The best photography camera is the one that's right for you. For us, that's the Sony a7IV, a full-frame mirrorless camera with top-spec autofocus and excellent image quality. But a different photographer on a different day could well need something else. That's why our comprehensive guide covers all bases. The products in our roundup below are recommended on the basis of our in-depth tests. From beginner cameras like the Canon EOS R10 to professional models like the Sony a7RV, we've reviewed each option in detail so that we know exactly what type of photography and photographer it's best for. We have listed the best mirrorless camera 2025, and their key features you need to consider this to help you choose the best one for you. For more information on the product, as always, I've included a link in the description box down below, which are updated with the best prices on each product. Like the video, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Be sure to stay tuned till the end so you don't miss anything. Now let's get started. Number 5. Nikon Z8. Mirrorless camera systems have been growing in popularity over the last few years, and it seems most brands have completely ditched the DSLR concept altogether. Over the last decade, I've had the opportunity to own and use the Nikon D5300 to the D750, D850, Z6, Z6 II, Z7 II, and now the Nikon Z8, and have seen just how many changes and improvements have come to Nikon mirrorless camera systems. When the Nikon Z8 was released in early 2023, I knew I had to get my hands on one. The Z9 had been out for quite some time, but the bulky system and lofty price tag was not something I felt I needed or wanted. I'm a full-time wedding photographer, but also have grown a good following on Instagram where I'm known for my outdoor landscapes and wildlife photography, specifically moody Pacific Northwest forest photography and eagles. Over my time as a photographer, I have tried just about every editing style and genre of photography and know my camera systems and their capabilities well. In this article, I want to give my professional review of the Nikon Z8 after using it for the last 6 months. I have had the opportunity of using it in many different settings and genres, from weddings to wildlife photography, landscapes, product photography, and real estate. Before I get into who I think this camera is best suited for, I want to start off the review with some basic specs, and cover my real-world observations of the camera's autofocus, image quality, camera size and ergonomics, video capabilities, and some of the most complained about features. Spoiler, there aren't many. The first thing I noticed when using the Nikon Z8 is the snappy autofocus and autofocus settings. Before buying the Z8, I had been using the Nikon Z6 II for weddings since it was released. It was one of the few cameras I've ever pre-ordered, back in October of 2020. Number 4. Sony a7RV. Sony has been dominating the mirrorless camera market for many years now, especially when it comes to high-resolution sensors. Stepping into the lead with the 42-megapixel A7R II in 2015, and regaining that lead with the 60-megapixel A7R I4 in 2019, only a few competitors have ever out-resolved the Sony R-series lineup. Today, in this Sony a7RV review, I'm going to tell you why I think this camera is not just a one-trick megapixel pony, but a versatile, high-performance camera made for many different types of photography, videography, and content creation. At first, the A7R series, R stands for resolution, of course, was unfortunately not a jack of all trades. 10 years ago, it was difficult to manage such high-resolution image files. Remember, the first and second A7R only had uncompressed RAW and lossy compressed RAW, no lossless. You were much better off with one of the R's excellent siblings, a plain A7 series or the low-resolution, video-oriented A7S series. Today, however, things are completely different. First and foremost, storage solutions are more abundant and affordable today, and the Sony a7RV has multiple RAW file options to help you save space if you need it. More on that below. Secondly, its overall shooting speed is respectable at 10 FPS, and the autofocus processor is a first for the R series. A dedicated AI processor, separate from the Bion ZXR processor, makes a world of difference in setting Sony's autofocus capabilities above the competition. Number 3. Canon EOS R5. Right after the Canon EOS R5 was released, I received one from Canon for a review. I liked the camera enough to make a gradual switch from the EOS 5D Mark IV. Now, after 3 years, I would like to share my long-term experience and the things that could or should be improved in the next iteration. For me, the most important benefit from the Canon EOS R5 was the autofocus system. This was a giant leap forward from the system found in the EOS 5D Mark IV. It made photographing weddings and people a lot easier. Since that time, I've used the two EOS R5 cameras intensively for a wide range of photography and for filming. I've used the camera to review new lenses, and I got a chance to compare it to the newer EOS models that were released over the years that followed. Due to the direct comparison with the newer EOS models, the EOS R5 felt less special over time. Innovation goes fast nowadays, and lesser EOS models prove to be better in some ways. That doesn't mean the EOS R5 isn't up to the task anymore, but it has become the old model mirrorless camera sooner than expected. The differences are mainly on the inside, but there are also a couple of exterior differences. Of course, this is a logical evolution of camera models. Like the EOS R5 and EOS R6 were improved models compared to the EOS R and EOS RP. The newer mirrorless models were designed with knowledge of the upsides and downsides of the previous models, being the EOS R5 and EOS R6. Don't get me wrong, I'm still happy with the Canon EOS R5, and the images it produces are great. The resolution is perhaps a bit too much for most situations, but I won't complain there. The camera is convenient to hold, and I love the viewfinder and LCD screen. The menu is easy to use, and the touchscreen functionality works like a charm. Number 2. Sony A7R IV. Although the A7R IV's borderline bonkers 60 megapixel of resolution grabbed most of the headlines upon its release, and understandably so, the real story here is how busy Sony has been working on refinements to the body and the interface. The result is a camera that gets out of your way much more so than any A7 series camera before it, so that you can focus on your photography and really make the most of all those megapixels on tap. For professional wedding photographers, landscape shooters, and studio portraitists, the Sony A7R IV is frankly the camera to beat right now. To be sure, there will always be people who profess that they just need the resolution the Sony offers. But I suspect the vast majority of photographers picking up the A7R IV will be more enamored with the updated ergonomics than anything else. The grip is generous and comfortable. The buttons and dials are now more easily operated with gloves in cold outdoor environments. And the AF point is now easy to see. Speaking of those outdoor environments, Sony has updated the camera's weather sealing in an effort to help it stand up to the elements better than its forebears. Perhaps Sony's greatest triumph is that, with few exceptions, the A7R fairer doesn't feel like it's churning out files with 60 million pixels. While we still wish the general interface was a bit snappier, the A7R FE offers sports and action-appropriate 10 FPS burst shooting, albeit with clumsily compressed 12-bit RAW files. The autofocus is generally excellent, with the camera's real-time tracking AF text smoothly transitioning from subject tracking to IAF and back again without fuss. Number 1. Nikon Z9. Just a quick forward to note that even if you don't shoot Nikon, I tried to write this review with insights that every photographer should find helpful when considering which camera system to purchase. Additionally, every image you see in this post, aside from the images of camera bodies, was made using the Nikon Z9. There are a select few raw files attached to this post, if you'd like to download and try your editing on them yourself. On to the review. Nikon has a special place in my heart as a camera system. I sort of randomly fell into the Nikon camp during a backpacking trip through Europe about 20 years ago. It was my second trip abroad for the sole purpose of making photographs, and I had my first serious digital camera with me, a Sony CyberShot DSCF 707. I was traveling with a friend, and in our very first cab from the Dublin airport, we had to stop to get cash out of the ATM, because credit cards weren't a thing in taxis yet, neither were smartphones. I got out to get cash and left my small camera side bag in the seat, because I thought I'd be getting back in to continue on to our hostel. Well, the driver said it was just 1 block away, so we might as well just walk the rest of the way, which made sense. We got our bags from the trunk, and off he went, with my beloved Sony CyberShot sitting in the passenger seat. Obviously, I never got that camera back. It's funny to think that, in a way, I was so early to the Sony mirrorless world. It's shocking to think how many aspects of that original camera cross over to how I prefer to shoot today. Sony really did get a lot right back then. It took a few days, but once we landed in Amsterdam, we were finally able to find a decent enough camera store that actually sold DSLR cameras.